Hello everybody and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome back everybody. If you just get so frustrated and disappointed that you feel like nobody truly appreciates and values movies like you do, and then when you try to sit down and talk to somebody about it, it doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't feel as good as maybe talking to yourself about it. And that's okay. I think we've all been there, but you don't have to do it. You can if you still want to, but that's what the ZakIsCinema beautiful community is for. We're all talking movies here together, so please join us because that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. Today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the movie VHS 85, which came out in 2023. So as we jump into the review and discussion for VHS 85, obviously if you've been keeping up with the channel, we were trying our very hardest. I was trying so hard to cover the entire VHS franchise in the month of October leading up to Halloween. I so viciously and violently failed at that, so that's my bad. I know a handful of you were really looking forward to this, all five of my beautiful viewers here, but that's okay. I'm this far in, I just got to keep going. So that was the goal. We still have some rankings planned, so look forward to those if you're a fan of VHS or found footage. But if you're new to the channel or new to this review series, we are actually going to be doing something a little bit different since these are all basically mini movies all wrapped into one. We're going to be breaking down, reviewing, and discussing each and every short together here. And then we're also going to be doing something different with my rating where it's hard to rate this whole movie because some shorts work, some shorts don't. So instead, we're going to be doing a point system where when I'm done breaking down that short, I'm going to rate it on a scale of 0 to 1. So 0 being if I do not recommend this movie whatsoever, or the short, half a point if I'm kind of mixed on the experience, and then about 1 point if I fully recommend it. And then at the end, we're going to average them out so you get my rating in a percentage, which is a little bit different here for ZakIsCinema. So look forward to the end for that information and some of my overall thoughts moving forward. Without further ado, let's jump into VHS 85, starting with the very first short called No Wake, which was directed by Mike P. Nelson. A group of friends head out in an RV to party and camp by the lake, only to discover that after the violent sniper attack, they can't die, and that immortality comes with a monstrous consequence. So jumping into VHS 85, I wasn't too sure really what to expect because, like I said, loved VHS Halloween, really enjoyed some of the earlier ones, but then when Shudder took over their very first one, I really enjoyed, but then I think it was 99 that I was just super disappointed with, didn't really get into, so I kind of had a mixed experience going in with now Shudder taking over, so I was a little bit hesitant, just worried that ZakIsCinema was going to get hurt again here, but with this first one called No Wake, I really overall enjoyed this one. Spoilers for my thoughts on No Wake, but I really enjoyed the found footage angle and twist to this one, mashed up together with that camp slasher, almost reminiscent of, slasher movies, or more specifically Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not that I always need a justification, but I think it makes sense for a group of teens to be hanging out and recording each other and kind of documenting their adventure, and it's kind of neat kind of getting that perspective back in the day because you're used to more of those older camp slashers being filmed and directed in the traditional sense, so it's not too much different or too much unique in the videography section, I guess, but still having that found footage angle I think really works on a tired genre like this. And I do like that it kind of sets it up like it's gonna be a camp slasher because that's kind of the vibe it was going for. You figured somebody would be hunting these group of kids in the woods on their vacation and everything, and that happens, but it happens in a very different way with a very different outcome. And I think this also fixed some of my franchise issues with VHS of just having almost on purpose very, very unlikable characters to the point where I'm just waiting for all of them to die in tragic ways. But this one balances it well with which I was kind of nervous with a group of friends like this. I just figured they'd all be assholes, and they're a little bit asshole-ish to each other, I guess, but they kind of more so focus on the fun friend dynamic where they're all a little bit unlikable, but likable at the same time, so you kind of get behind that fun group friend dynamic, and you could see all of these guys being friends with each other. So I like how they kind of tone that down a little bit, it seemed like. And like I hinted at the beginning of this, I really enjoy how it kind of misleads you into thinking this is going to be a camp slasher or something like that, to where I really wasn't sure where it was going, especially when they went out on the boat. I'm like, okay, I figured something tragic and awful is going to happen on this boat, but I'm not really too sure what exactly is going to be happening on this boat. And it totally caught me off guard in the best way possible when just all of a sudden these characters, these groups of friends just getting sniped when they're out on the boat in the middle of the lake, just out of nowhere. It was so unexpected to me and so graphic and so visceral. And again, that found footage works so well in a segment like this because it literally puts you on the boat and you're with one of the characters that's in the situation, so you almost feel like you're kind of in the situation as well. And I was surprised with how just real graphic it got, where a lot of these VHS movies have graphic stuff and gore and stuff, but it's a little bit leaning on that over the top vibe. But this one to me almost reminded me of segments, not to the exact extent, but segments out of Saving Private Ryan or war films where you have these characters in the middle of nowhere, out in the open, danger to getting sniped, and that's what happens. And you see a couple characters get shot in horrific ways. There's one girl, I think she's the second one that gets shot, that's shot right through her jaw, where she like almost catches her jaw in her hand, and that image and that sequence really stood out to me. So I absolutely love that, because as soon as that happened, I'm like, I have no idea where this is going. This is absolutely crazy. And I think it's such a cool twist, because that in and of itself is creepy. And then when they started getting sniped, I'm like, okay, maybe one's gonna live and then fight back or find out who was doing this. But then it's a really cool twist and a unique concept where they all come back to life. They still have their injuries, they still look like they should be dead, but they all come back to life, and you're like, what the fuck is gonna happen? And they all remember it, they're all aware, they're all still feeling the pain, but they're alive in some sort of way when they shouldn't be. And it's another great twist when you find out two of the friends that stayed back were killed and aren't coming back to life. So it introduces that mystery element where you're like, what exactly is going on? Who was doing this? Why are they doing this? Why did some characters survive? Why did others not survive if they were all together? So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. And I was almost so disappointed where when it cut off, I'm like, oh dear God, is that really it? Like, you're really just going to leave me on a cliffhanger like this? Like, I figured it would tie in somewhere or go back into the frame narrative. So we're almost going to kind of pick up this review because it does follow up in another segment, and I feel like I have more to say about it and just that concept in general. But overall, with this short, especially how it gets picked up later on, I absolutely adored this one, really enjoyed this one. So for this short, No Wake, we're going 1 point. Next, we're going to be discussing God of Death, directed by Gigi Saul Guerrero. During the chaos of an earthquake, a TV news crew joins rescue efforts, but soon finds themselves stalked by a supernatural god of death amid the rubble. Now, to me, I really enjoyed the initial premise and setup for this short because I liked how it kind of reminded me almost of Final Destination just a little bit, where it blends those freak accidents but real life occurrences like an earthquake and blends it with the supernatural and twists it up and puts it into a horror movie. So I always like when movies can kind of blend either everyday occurrences or like once in a lifetime kind of occurrences or a couple in a lifetime occurrences and blends it with that horror, because it's just one of those things where it can leave you thinking long after you watched it. So I like this because I don't know if I've really seen a horror movie that takes place during an earthquake and the aftermath of it, but then introduces a demonic, spiritual, and cultural, ritualistic kind of edge to it. So I think those two genres, if you will, really blended well here. In a minor nitpick, though, it never takes me out of it. I feel like I'm so forgiving on the whole found footage thing, because if that's what you're going for, that's what you're going for. To me, I don't need a whole lot of reason as to why these characters are recording themselves or holding the camera. That's just, it is what it is sort of thing. But to me, this one definitely stretched it a little bit, where you just had an earthquake and you're trying to escape because there is more of it coming. There's still more rubble falling down. The building's unstable, but all these characters are still recording, still getting characters in shots and going back for the camera. There's rescuers asking if the characters need the camera, like, why don't we just leave the camera? They're passing the camera back and forth, and never once does anyone address as to why they're recording this. I assume it was, in case they don't make it and they find the footage, but I don't know. If you're not going to make it out of that building, I assume the camera won't either. So this one felt like it pushed it a little bit. Just minor nitpick, really doesn't ruin my experience, but it was a difficult one to balance, I think. And to me, I realized that, of course, it's going to be the earthquake, but of course, there's going to be something else revealed or something else tying in. But I was really on the edge of my seat here, just kind of wondering what exactly are they going to find, what exactly is going to happen, and who's going to make it out of this awful event. So it introduces a discovery side while also introducing an escape movie segment as well. So I like the blending of those two. And I like how it kind of plays out where they're working on escaping. Some characters are just getting taken out because of the earthquake and the rubble falling. There's graphic stuff being shown, but then these rescuers are trying to find a way to escape with some of the TV crew and go throughout this news channel broadcasting station building, where the earthquake almost kind of exposes and reveals some more of this cult-like cave and this ritual that was happening right beneath this news broadcasting tower that was hidden in their basement. So then when that's introduced, you're like, okay, was it this cult and demon that caused the earthquake? Was the earthquake just happened to reveal this and unleash it almost in a certain way? And I couldn't imagine being in that position and seeing something like that when you're just trying to make it out alive. So I really enjoyed that part. I like where it continues to progress as well and find it unsettling and creepy and over the top in the best way, where we get shots and scenes of the demonic god coming to life and possessing one of the workers, and ends up using or having him use a crowbar on himself as he rips out his neck and rips out his heart and allows the demon to eat it from him, gaining some sort of life from this human sacrifice in and of itself. So I thought that was really cool. Subtle hints at lore and world building with this I thought was really effective in such a short period of time as well. And again, I feel like I've said this in some of the best VHS segments, but even though I had my nitpicks with the found footage angle with this one, I think putting you in this situation makes a lot of sense and makes you feel like you're there. I think it maybe would have been better if the rescuers were maybe just wearing cameras, and that would have negated my negative nitpick with it. But I do really enjoy this one. I don't think it's anything unique or anything really specific that sticks out to me, but it's just a fun premise for a found footage movie and introduces some fun, earth-shattering, demonic possession that feels more intense because of the situation our characters are in. So really enjoyed this one. I think for this one, I gotta go 1 point. Next, let's discuss the short TKNOGD. Not sure if that's how you actually say it. I don't even know if it's a word. I don't know. But this one was directed by Natasha Kermani and written by Zoe Cooper. A performance artist experiments with VR to channel a god of technology, only to find the digital realm bleeding into real life with horrifying results. And this one, unfortunately, was just such a dud in my experience with VHS 85, unfortunately. But at the start, I was interested because it's supposed to take place in 1985. I said it before, but I love when these VHS segments can blend horror, sci-fi, and technology, almost giving you a Black Mirror kind of vibe and effect with more horror thrown into it. So I thought that's what it was going for. And to me, the beginning kind of felt like, a Black Mirror episode mixed with a performance TED Talk talk almost, but set in the 80s. So I thought I had something unique going for it and something very different that we haven't seen a lot before in VHS, where normally it's traditional found footage, but here we're just watching somebody recording themselves doing a performance. So I thought the initial premise was at least interesting and a lot you could do, especially with talking about VR technology, where this movie came out in 2023, but looking back in the 80s and comparing where VR is now and what people thought it might be back in the 80s. So there was a lot going for this. Unfortunately, it is not scary, creepy, or thought-provoking in any sort of way. It just kind of comes off as silly and stupid, where we have this over-the-top slam poetry performer straight out of the character, I'm blanking on his name, but in 22 Jump Street, when Jonah Hill's character is performing, that's what it kind of felt like to me too. And she's demonstrating this idea and just kind of yelling themes and messages at us, and just kind of felt very on the nose, which I get was probably the point of the performance, but also as the writers to kind of tell the audience too. So it just kind of took me out of it, especially every time the girl was just yelling, making noises, and moaning into her microphone too. I'm like, I get it. She's a performing art person. I get that some of these are a little weird and it's art. So, appreciate it on that merit. But to me, I just did not appreciate this one whatsoever. Like I hinted at it at the beginning, I feel like this is such a cool, unique concept and a lot of scary things you can do with VR, with like the world bleeding into VR and VR blending and bleeding into the real world. And there were so many other ways you could explore scary things about VR, and especially what people thought it was going to lead to. They could have done something where almost like the creator gets obsessed with the world and almost maybe creates and forms his own god and religion that ends up tearing the world apart or infecting him in some way. So something a little bit more personal, but instead we just kind of get this goofy ass girl doing slam poetry with a VR goggle on her head, and then she's walking in the VR world and she just sees this cheap CGI looking monster that starts tearing her apart in the game, and then her limbs and body starts getting torn apart in the real world, and then it ends. So it felt like it said nothing. It felt like it was kind of going nowhere, really made no point, and forgot to be scary. So easily for me, this one I gotta go 0 points. Next, let's discuss the short Ambrosia. Again, written and directed by Mike P. Nelson. Picking up after no wake, the attackers from that night's massacre are hunted down in their own home by the police, but the events reveal darker supernatural ties. And so obviously this is the short I was referencing when I was talking about the short No Wake. So I guess we're kind of picking up that review as well. We're also talking about this one. But to me, I got so excited when I figured out what was going on and that these two were connected. And it just got me thinking about how that is such a great concept. And I really, really wish this franchise would explore that more, especially with its use of frame narratives, how interesting, trippy, and mind-blowing you could really get with either having all the shorts connected and you don't figure out until the last one, or weaving in a frame narrative that secretly kind of combines all the shorts and ties them in a coherent narrative sense almost, and really makes you kind of go back to want to rewatch some of these to pick up on some of those details. So to me, this just kind of got me thinking about that, and just having these two shorts in and of itself is really interesting, where you're connecting two different tapes but having them intertwined from two completely different perspectives. And it's in your face, you kind of pick up on it, but it's like subtle enough to where we feel like we're watching two different tapes. We got the beginning, we skipped maybe the middle, and now we're getting the ending tape. So I think it's a great idea. Again, I really wish this franchise would explore that more, because like I said, with the frame narrative you could do really cool things. Just having basically all these tapes be chapters that combine in some way, I feel like there's so many things you could do and really turn this into a different direction for the franchise instead of doing the same thing over and over again. So just an idea. Maybe VHS if you're watching, or Shudder if you're watching. First of all, hello and welcome, but let's talk about it maybe. I don't know. But getting into the short, I like the kind of slight reveals you get that kind of tie these two shorts together, where at first it's this family gathering, family party, you're not even really aware the shorts are connected until you see one of the kids with the same exact squirt gun that was shown in No Wake. We also see the RV and a kid with the squirt gun referencing the RV, and we see it kind of drive away. And then we also see on the family, they have the tattoos of the Roman numerals number 7, which we saw at the end of No Wake, spray painted on their RV. So I thought things like that, like they never have a character really sit down and explain, like, remember this, now we're picking up now. They kind of, now that I said that out loud, they kind of do, but it makes sense when we kind of get to it here, where I guess let's get into that, because I thought it was so fucking funny, creepy, weird, and just uncomfortable when you get this family kind of gathering around. You think it's some quinceañera or some family graduation party where they're talking to one of the younger kids there, and she is presenting to the family, talking about family history and tradition. You're just kind of wondering what creepy shit they're into, but then they start talking and celebrating the killings of people in sevens, and then they sit down to watch this girl's tape where we get the perspective of her sniping those kids off the boat. And I found it so funny and unsettling because they're sitting down watching it like it's some old sweet home video that they made, that they're reminiscing of, like a baby taking their first steps. It almost kind of reminded me too of in Dexter Resurrection, when you get all the serial killers presenting their killings as well. So I thought it had that same fun, unique vibe to it as well. And then I think it just adds a whole other layer to your earlier short, where that is such an interesting short, but then we get the perspective of what was actually happening, and that is so interesting. And seeing these two combine is just so unique and interesting. That's why I really wish VHS would do more of the connecting with each other. And I thought this short went on to another level, where when the police finally surround the house and the whole family arms up like they're John Wick getting ready to protect the Continental Hotel, and they're all ready to sacrifice themselves and go down fighting for their family. And I love the amazing twist you get in here, where we think back to when the kid had the water gun and was squirting people, and we, figure out from the first one, I forgot to mention that they figure out the water is something in the water is what is making them stay alive after something so horrific. And we see him squirting his family, and then you get the realization that he squirted most of his family so that way they would stay alive. I mean, the kid didn't know it, but that's what the RV kids were doing. So when our main girl goes down fighting but then wakes up and gets arrested, it's such a satisfying way to really wrap up such a horrific, awful family, where she couldn't even get the satisfaction of dying and being sacrificed for her family. So I love this one. I love the both of them, and I think it elevates this whole movie, just including these two. So easily, we're gonna go 1 point. Next, let's discuss Dream Kill, which was directed by Scott Derrickson. A boy's video camera starts recording his terrifying nightmares, and those dreams begin coming true in violent ways. And something that really stood out to me about this short is you can immediately tell it was directed by Scott Derrickson. And I think that was something I was maybe missing, where all the shorts feel different, but some director visual flair and style thrown into here. So like I said, you could easily tell this is by Scott Derrickson with his creepy ass Super 8 and 16mm style for his dream sequences. And in a short called Dream Kill, you get a lot of those dream sequences, which I think are absolutely amazing. And to me, I saw this after I just watched the Black Phone 2, of course, but it almost felt like a test demo and test reel for what he was going to do more of in the Black Phone 2. And these dream sequences are horrific. They're creepy. They're really brutal too, which was awesome. I was wondering if they're going to kind of hold back on the gore. Not that the Black Phone 2 is overly gory, but you get some stuff in here. I think this is a little bit more as well. So I like seeing that out of Derrickson as well. And I think just kind of thinking out loud, I think he could make a really unique and interesting Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'd love to see him involved in something like that. Just again, kind of throwing that out there. And back to the short, I think these Super 8 films are so brutal, disturbing, and even though they're in a dream sequence, they feel so real, and it feels like it elevates its premise and elevates its intensity and what these characters got to quickly figure out because of what this slasher villain is really trying to do. And I love the creepy, twisted, horrific idea of this creepy murder tape being sent to the police of a murder, but when the police get it, they watch it and don't know what's going on, but then a couple times a week later they get a call to the murder that they watched in the tape about a week or two ago. Like, that is such a trippy Inception level kind of idea for a simple horror movie as well. And I love how it's such a twisted concept that really plays with dreams and almost has this time travel edge to it too that I thought was awesome. And again, even though it goes for these high concepts, at the end of the day it is almost like a slasher short. And I like the killer's electric meat saw weapon, and it gets so brutal with the skinning and the cutting, and it really, with those dream sequences and the grainy footage, really to me felt like a super R-rated snuff film, kind of having that vibe. And something we haven't even mentioned, absolutely love how Scott Derrickson found a way to connect this to the Black Phone with having one of the characters mention that they have a cousin named Gwen going through something very similar. And, you know, it fits in this world. It expands the Black Phone just a little bit. And I just like that subtle thing that they kind of threw in there. And again, the central concept is just so cool, and you tell Scott Derrickson is just a really unique director, at least with his concepts, whether you like his movies or not. I think the concepts are almost on another level, where not only the tape and the police stuff and that mystery investigative side is interesting, but we're following this kid who ends up having these dreams of these murders, and his dreams are being recorded on these VHS tapes because he realized they were playing late at night on the TV, so he started recording them and found a way to record them and was sending them to the police to try and help. So that puts our character in a unique predicament where he's trying to help, but it makes him look suspicious, but his explanation kind of makes a little bit sense. So really enjoyed that. And I love in this movie here, we get a kind of unique twist here as well, where we find out the character's dad is actually aware of what is really going on and ends up being exposed for knowing all the victims, as these were women and people accusing him of sexual assault. And then we find out that's why he was changing his role in the police station and accusing him of stalking and creeping on him. And he just ends up shooting his friend police officer in the face, and it just turns this whole thing on its head, where we get to find out this dad that we barely know was the villain, and something completely kind of unexpected, at least to me. And I think it leads to an interesting climax where you get this kid and his dad fighting and battling each other and using that dream sequence to tie everything together, where at the end we see the kid's dream kind of playing out on the camcorder in the police station, but we also see it kind of playing out in real life as well. Just kind of, again, some Inception kind of horror edge to it as well. So to me, this really felt like the perfect blend of, like I said a million times, Inception, a little bit of the Black Phone, Sinister in there, and then movies like, I guess, The Terminator as well. And I just love how violent, trippy, weird, and creative this one really felt. So to me, I adore this short. We are going to go 1 point. Lastly, let's discuss the frame narrative called Total Copy. Directed by David Bruckner. Presented as a fake documentary, scientists studying a shape-shifting entity named Rory find their experiments spiraling out of control as the creature begins imitating and destabilizing everything in its path. And I feel like my opinion on these frame narratives have kind of changed a little bit, where in the beginning I really appreciated when it kind of explained the origin. We were watching the tapes along with the characters in the frame narrative short as well, and that's how it was portrayed to the audience, and that's how it kind of connected everything. But throughout the first couple, when they tried to do different versions of that, I realized it kind of got repetitive, and maybe I don't need an origin, maybe I don't need an explanation, maybe tie it together in some other way. So we'll get to it, but I wish this one tied in, at least theme-wise, maybe a little bit more and had a reason for jumping 2 different tapes. But I do like that this one goes for something very unique. It's almost almost just a short in and of itself, similar to VHS Halloween, where it's just kind of spliced up and they threw frame narrative on the title there. So I appreciate it more. I think they recognize how repetitive and dumb that could really get. So I appreciate this one, at least for trying something different. And I really enjoy with this one how it goes for that fake documentary vibe. I think that's perfect for found footage, and especially a segment kind of like this where it makes sense to have found footage stuff, but then the documentary stuff also adds this sense of realism to it that I really enjoy. And I think the concept is unique where we're getting this scientist and this crew studying this alien, and that concept might not be unique, but I appreciate that the alien and what it can do and what they're trying to figure out feels very real and unique. It's almost like we're getting to see play out what would have happened if E.T. was captured by the government much sooner and the kids never rescued him. That's what I imagine how it would play out. And I think it leads to an interesting progression throughout the movie where it's spliced up because you get to see this doctor become very obsessed with his research, start to ignore clear warning signs because he's just focused on figuring this alien out. And I do like the reveal of the alien in his final form and his tentacles as they dismember people and that creepy tail thing that kind of waves around and dismembers people. So I enjoyed where it led to. However, unfortunately, I felt like it kind of all led to something very predictable and kind of bland where, I assumed this wasn't going to go well, and it doesn't go well and doesn't try to be used as a frame narrative, doesn't try to connect anything, and just kind of plays out exactly how you think it would be. And, it's interesting how they're trying to test this alien by putting him in like a family living room, making him watch TV. So I thought it was funny, but also kind of silly and lame at the same time when the ending shot is the alien doing this hip thrust workout thing from a workout video that they were forcing him to watch, that the alien's doing it and he's doing it with all the dead bodies as well. So I don't know. I think it could have left off on a creepier, more unique or different kind of note that they just seemed like they didn't really try for. But I know I was a little negative on that. I appreciate this one. I think it does work. I had a good time with this one. So I think we'll go a half a point for the frame narrative. However, to me, overall, I think VHS 85 is right up there with VHS Halloween. Just one of my favorites out of this franchise. I think it's truly one of the best easily, and really only had a couple of shorts and a couple of mixed ones that I just wasn't the highest on. But overall, even the bad ones, I still had stuff I really appreciated with it. And this one really stands out to me. There's some great things where they're connecting segments now, doing something a little bit different. And just find it kind of surprising that I think this has lower reviews on Rotten Tomatoes compared to 99 and beyond as well. So I really enjoy this one. I don't know if I'm in an island with this one, but for my rating for this, out of the 6 total shorts, including that frame narrative, if you add up all my points, we are going to give VHS 85 a 4.5 out of 6. Or 75% for my final rating here for VHS 85. But you guys have my thoughts here on VHS 85. Again, so sorry this did not release in October here. I'm too deep in. We're going to finish it. We're going to do the rankings. So look forward to that. But please let me know if I'm on an island with this one, with really adoring VHS 85 and trying to see if this might be my number one out of all of them. Let me know your favorite segment, your least favorite segment. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. I'd love to hear all your thoughts and feelings down below here. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.